Hi, it's Kieran again. So today's session we're gonna do basically coding questionnaires, which is the main feature in research. Um, let's say, for example, you're doing a study and you're required to use a serial questionnaire to collect some data. Um, Actually, coding your questionnaire is how you get it in from a printed format to data itself in terms of numbers. This is what we use for analysis later on and to make our interpretations and conclusions or look for patterns in data. So uh, let's get started. So what I have in front of me here, or in front of you, is a sample questionnaire which I developed to basically describe how you code a questionnaire for when you have to get it into any statistical software, whether it be SPSS, Stata, or R, or Minitab, or any other statistical software which you're using, or SAS, for example. So, this is a questionnaire which I developed, which looked at basically your interpretations and your satisfaction levels at university, and this is usually for university students. It's just a training questionnaire. So first question I have basic questions on demographics, gender, age. I have age categories, and I'll describe what are the data: ethnicity, education, and then we have some Likert skills here. We have some multiple selection questions, satisfaction in terms of the facility at the university, and basically we have some open-ended questions here. So how you start to code it is based on whether the responses of particular persons, and if someone selects a particular response or enters data somewhere on your survey, that's what you're gonna actually enter into your questionnaire. So let's say, for example, I am a male. I am 26. Right. I'm 26 years old. I will fall into this category here, and I would be of Afro descent, and my highest form of education is tertiary education. Okay, so this is basically how someone would fill out a questionnaire or any of your questionnaires which you've developed. How do we actually get information into coded data to enter into our statistical software? Well, that's very simple. Now for coding, we code based on different types of variables. So we have three types of variables, or four main types of variables. We have nominal data, we have ordinal or categorical data, and we have continuous or discrete data, right? So with the nominal data, this basically says that there's no difference between the categories, whereas ordinal data is showing an order or distinct difference between the categories. So gender would be obviously a nominal because there's no difference between gender groups, females and females. However, for age categories, there's big difference between the higher you go in age, the older you'll be, or the lower in age, the younger you'll be. Okay. So based on that explanation, if you can figure out what ethnicity is, ethnicity would actually be a nominal variable, and education could possibly be a nominal or ordinal type of variable. Okay. So how we code this, basically we assign numbers to each one of these responses. So for male and female, it's your determination what you'd like to use. Personally, I like to use 0 and 1, which is helpful for the analysis. But for just starting off, we can code this as 1 and 2. So for male, we put this a code of 1, and female a code of 2. Right? So if someone ticks, let's say male, when you're entering it into your software, you would enter the number 1, and then you'd identify what one actually stands for in your software. And I'll go through this in a later video. For age, let's say you have open response here for age, where they're supposed to put in a number, whether it be age, height, weight, or income, or something like that. You actually just enter the number just it is. So for me, as I said, I am 26 years old. So in my software, I will be entering 26 years old, 26 years. For categories, we can code it just like how we coded gender, even though it's an ordinal variable. So we can code this as 1, this as 2, this as 3, this as 4, this as 5. Okay. Let's go down to ethnicity. So for ethnicity, again, we're coding just as usual. So after descent, we go as a code of 1. This is a 1. This is a code of 2. 2. This is a code 3. Right. And this is a code of 4. Right. When you have a option like for ethnicity and you have other and you have place state, you actually will create a second variable that will be used to actually identify the person or actually put in data that they wrote out here, right? So you might have a other variable or other place state variable, and that's where you actually will type in that data. Okay, and I'll show you that in a later video. Authentication, you have 1, 2, and 3, right? So now we're down to our Likert skills. So sometimes if you're looking at particular psychometric scales or anything, satisfaction or any like sensory evaluation and stuff like that, you use something we call Likert, which can either range from 1 to 5, 1 to 7 to 9, depending on what scale you're using. Like if you're looking like strongly disagree to strongly agree, these are what we use call Likert scales. So in this instance here, we're moving from strongly disagree to strongly agree, as I have stated here. The question states below are 5 statements you may agree with or disagree with, and using a 1 to 7 scale below, this is how we enter our data. Right? So I have it simple put here, where whichever option someone circles, what you enter, and you would enter that number. Okay, so say in most ways, if I is close to ideal, I would say I am at a 6 for this. Okay, so it's the same format would you use for other questions. Let's say this was a neutral category. Let's put N there, right? 4 will be identified as neutral. Let's say this was slightly agree or moderately agree. Let's say that's moderately agree, right? And this one was just agree, right? And this is moderately. Let's put that. Sorry, it's moderately agree. So M there, and we have just disagree. Right, so the 7-point scale there. And we enter it in our statistical software, we'll actually be able to put in these labels onto it. Alright, so the rest of the questions here follow this same format. Alright, so number 7. What modes of transport did you utilize to communicate to the university for the past 30 days? So this is what we call a multiple response question, where a participant can actually select more than one option here. So let's say, for example, within the past 30 days, I used a personal car. I also walked, and I some days. Right? I have several options here. Now the question would be, how would we enter this information into our software? What you would have to do would be to actually treat each of the different responses as a separate variable, right? So, for example, what I typically do is I create, in terms of my coding, is to treat it as a yes or no. So, even yes and no questions, we tend to code those 1 and 0 with not selecting the box here will be treated as no, and for selecting it, that would be treated as yes, right? and you treat each one of those as yes or no questions. And the coding for those you would see in terms of 0 for no and yes for 1. Okay, so when you're coding those, so let's say for example for personal car, this code would be 1, bus would be 0, maxi taxi would be 0, walk-in 1, bike 1, taxi 0, other 0, right? We have another Likert scale here, but for this one rates your satisfaction level with the different facilities at your university. The reason why I'm doing this one is actually reverse coded here. So not applicable, which is n/a, you can treat as code of 0. When you have options like that, you always treat it as 0. Very dissatisfied, if we're going as a Likert scale, you can treat that as a code of 1. Dissatisfied, code of 2. Neutral 3. Satisfied 4. And very satisfied 5. Right? Excuse my 5 there. So this is a 5-point Likert scale, which is treated, and each different options here, which is different facilities, will be treated as a separate variable. Now, questions 9 and 10 would be what we call free response questions, where persons actually get to write out their opinions on the question, what the question is asking. So for question 9, what did you enjoy most about junior time at university? I would say the teaching was my most enjoyable part. So let me just write the word teaching here, right? And what I least enjoy about it was let's say the exams. So in my software, I'll actually be typing out all of these words, right? And the same thing for question 11. This is the data that you actually enter. You don't have to enter those as coded information. Okay, so this is basically how you code data or code questionnaires. My next video would go into how to actually enter that data into statistical software such as SPSS. Okay, alright, guys, take care.